Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to your lunch break. My name is Ivana. If you are new here, if you are not, thank you for joining us. And it's Tuesday, hard to believe already. And today we're talking about something that you might have seen on your TV or on your social media, and that is the hurricane that is approaching the south. And we are joined today by our own meteorologist, Leigh Morgan. She is going to give us a little bit of an update on Hurricane Laura, what to expect, when it is coming, and where it is projected to hit. So if you have any questions about your specific area or about what you can expect there, let me know. I'll be watching them come in and I will ask Leigh. We also are going to leave a link to Leigh's latest forecast, which is available on AL.com. We will leave a link here so you can read that and keep up with it throughout the day. So Leigh, first of all, thank you so much for coming and giving us a little bit of an update on what we can expect weather-wise. I know you and I are both in Birmingham and it is already raining here.
Thanks to Marco. That was yesterday's storm.
Before we even talk about Laura, where is Marco? What's the deal with Marco?
Marco is done. It is gone. It briefly became a hurricane on Sunday, and then it weakened right after that. That was all it had. And then it made landfall yesterday afternoon around 6 o'clock around the mouth of the Mississippi River. And after that, it just gave up the ghost. It was done. And they classified it as a remnant low this morning and quit issuing advisories on it. It really got sheared apart. But wind shear, that's when wind comes in different directions at different levels in the atmosphere, and it's not good for hurricanes. It can kind of rip them apart. And that's what happened to Marco. And so most of its rain and the gustier winds were actually over the Florida Panhandle and in parts of Alabama too. Got a lot of rain from Marco, but the center actually came in around Louisiana. So, but Marco is gone now. It's just a swirl of clouds, and everybody has turned their attention to Laura.
Okay, so we don't have to worry about Marco anymore. It is now Laura. Now, when is Laura projected to make landfall, and where exactly is Laura headed?
All right, well, Laura is in the southern Gulf right now, just crossed over Cuba yesterday. Didn't do a whole lot to weaken it, and it was upgraded to a Category 1 hurricane earlier this morning. So the National Hurricane Center, and they're really good at these track forecasts. They are projecting Laura to continue on to the northwest, heading in the general direction of the East Texas and West Louisiana. It's going to strengthen. It could strengthen a lot between now and when it's projected to make landfall. And that should be late Wednesday or early Thursday morning, somewhere that they call it the cone of uncertainty or the forecast cone. I've even heard, there it is on the screen. I've even heard the director of the Hurricane Center once called it the cone of death. But just in jest, it's a very serious situation. But that cone stretches from southeast Texas through central Louisiana, and you can see the red area on that map. That's where the hurricane warnings were, and those were issued earlier this morning for Texas and Louisiana. So we're expecting Laura to make landfall late Wednesday, early Thursday. They're thinking it could be a major hurricane at landfall, and that's a Category 3 or stronger storm. So we're talking winds of 111 miles an hour or higher. So it's a pretty serious situation. There are a lot of low-lying areas along the coast there, especially in southwest Louisiana. They've already been ordering evacuations in places like Galveston, Texas, Beaumont, Port Arthur, a lot of southwest Louisiana. They're expecting a lot of storm surge, 7 to 11 feet. So that's the water coming inland, 7 to 11 feet.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty serious. So, and that's in addition to the wind and the heavy rain. So it's a very serious situation, and the people in that part of the Southeast really need to pay attention to it.
So this is, like you said, this is from the Weather Service here that we've got pulled up on our screen.
Right.
And this is Laura as of 10 a.m. today, Tuesday. Now, the landfall is expected, you said, tomorrow, Wednesday evening and into Thursday morning.
Yes. And you can see that they are projecting landfall. Now, somewhere within that cone, It could be a little to the west. It could be a little to the east. You don't need to focus on the center part of that because it's anywhere in that area. And then once it makes landfall, it's going to continue kind of right up the border of Texas and Louisiana, get into Arkansas, and then it should kind of hook right once it gets into Tennessee. And that's when parts of Alabama will be watching to see if we get any of those outer rain bands. It'll be a tropical depression by that point, they're thinking. So northwest, western parts of Alabama by Friday could see some gusty winds, some rain, and with landfalling tropical systems or the ones that are moving inland, you've always got to watch for tornadoes because they can spin up really quickly. And so we'll be keeping an eye on that, especially on Friday. And that depends on if it moves like they think it's going to.
It looks like, I know that we've heard that this could be pretty scary. It looks like a lot of that projected landfall is in that Louisiana, Texas region. But we do have some people asking about what can be expected both in Marshall County in North Alabama and in Birmingham. So should we expect that a little bit later in the week?
Right. And it just depends on where it goes when it comes inland. I think the track near the coast is kind of solidifying. There's not a whole lot of back and forth right now. Once it gets inland, there's a lot more uncertainty. It just depends when it's going to take that right turn, and that will affect Alabama. It'll be well inland at that point. It'll not be a hurricane. It'll be a tropical depression probably. And so we're talking the western part of Alabama, especially northwest Alabama, would be the most likely to see any kind of effects from Laura. So we're talking some gusty winds, some heavy rain. If y'all, it's very soupy out, at least where we are today, that's tropical moisture that's going to hang around for a few days, and that can set off those torrential downpours. And then we will watch out for, some spin up tornadoes. So, if Laura happens to move a little more to the east of what they were expecting or turns a little quicker once it's inland toward the east, then more of Alabama could be affected. But right now they're thinking just mainly western Alabama, northwest Alabama especially, and probably by Friday.
All right, so we know northwest Alabama, you need to be weather aware later in this week for after that hurricane makes landfall. So we know that. I'll pull up this map back in a second, but what can our southern parts of the state expect? What can the Gulf and that entire region near Mobile and the beaches, what are they in for?
Well, they're probably going right now because we have gotten really lucky. I mean, you've had two hurricanes in the Gulf in a week. And Alabama, knock on wood, has gotten, should escape with just minor effects from it. Now, with Marco out of the way, they're looking for rough seas, big waves, some inland minor coastal flooding in Mobile and Baldwin counties. The big thing that they really need to watch out for is rip currents. There's going to be a high risk of rip currents through the rest of the week. All along the Alabama and the Northwest Florida coast. So if you're going to the beach, just be aware of that. It's, not a good idea to get in the water when there's a high risk of rip currents because those are some of the deadliest things, especially in that region of Alabama. Though rip currents end up killing more people in some cases than tornadoes and hurricanes combined. Wow. So, and people don't take them as seriously as maybe they should because you look at the water and it's beautiful, but they can, get a hold of you and really put you in trouble. So just be sure if you're down near the coast and you want to get in the water to pay attention to the flags. If you get in at all, which you probably should not do, be near a lifeguard and just take extreme care. But other than that, we're looking at scattered rain and storms. The worst of Laura is going to be far to the west of Alabama. So they might get some rain and some storms for it, but they're not expecting major effects.
You talk about those rip currents and about how dangerous those could be. Is that something that would happen kind of later in the week, like we talked about after the hurricane makes landfall, or will that be more of the tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday kind of timeline?
It's already ongoing. I mean, they ramped up the risk to high before Marco got here, and it's going to be a high risk in place through the rest of the week. So, even after Laura's gone, it takes a while for things to calm back down after those big storms pass through. Laura's going to be a big storm and, a potentially very powerful storm. Right now, it's only a Category 1 hurricane with 75-mile-an-hour winds, but it's going over a lot of warm water in the Gulf, and the wind shear that gave Marco such a hard time is not supposed to be a factor at all for Laura. So there's not too much that could keep it from really explosively strengthening over the next 24 hours.
And I know that that's scary. And I know you talked about Northwest Alabama maybe being in one of the more dangerous spots. We've got Darlene watching from Haleyville. Unfortunately, Haleyville is often somewhere where they really experience the worst of storms and of the tail end. I don't know what it is about Haleyville, but what is it looking like in that area?
Well, that is on the kind of on the western part of, you could say, of the state. And it's just one of those things where we just got to watch that track. If it turns to the east once it's inland sooner than they expect, then those western Alabama and that area around there could be in for some more of a effects of the storm. But you got to remember, it's going to be overland by that point. It's going to be weakening. So, we're talking gusty winds, heavy rain, and then just keep an eye out for tornado. In those rain bands, sometimes tornadoes can spin up. So we just got to be on the lookout for those. Right now, the Storm Prediction Center doesn't have any part of Alabama in any kind of severe weather risk area, through Friday. So, right now they're not expecting it, but it's just something to keep an eye on because these tracks can always change when they move inland. And the Hurricane Center has said there is more uncertainty about the track once it gets inland.
And that is what can be scary. I know we've got Susie watching from Summerdale. In those South Alabama regions, do you know if there have been any advisories on evacuations or are people leaving the coast?
No, not that I know of around Alabama. Now, we're expecting, some minor coastal flooding along the coast, 1 to 2 feet, I think is what the National Weather Service in Mobile is looking at this point. But the big evacuations are coming far to the west, western Louisiana, eastern Texas. That's where the core of the storm is likely to make landfall. And generally areas to the east of where the eye or the center of the storm comes ashore have the worst effects, and they have the worst surge. They have some of the strongest winds. And so that's really right now looking to be western Louisiana so that's far enough away from South Alabama to where we think we should be fine. Now, that can always change, and that's why everybody in Alabama, especially on the coast, needs to keep an eye on the forecast because, like with Marco had a big shift in track, not too far from when it made landfall, where it shifted its path a little bit to the east. And so, that can always happen with these storms, and it's just you've always got to keep an eye on the latest forecast, and they issue them every 3 hours from the National Hurricane Center. So you can always get a pretty current forecast from them and to see what their thinking is about the path of the track.
We've got somebody watching, Kenyatta watching from Washington, D.C., says most of my family is in Alabama. I'm always concerned about the weather this time of year. Kenyatta, I think that unfortunately you're probably right to be concerned this time of year. It's hurricane season. We know that unfortunately, as Leigh mentioned earlier, hurricane season is far from over, unfortunately.
Yes. And we've already had 3 hurricanes in the Gulf of Mexico already this season. And like we were talking about earlier, the peak of the season we're just now getting into. So from now until late October is typically the busiest part of the season. And they have what they call the climatological, I hope I said that right, peak of the season comes around September the 10th. So that's typically, the peak of the season. And we're coming right up on that. So, it's been a busy year. We had Hurricane Karen. That was the first hurricane. No, excuse me, Hurricane Hannah. I don't know why I want to say Karen. And it hit South Texas the end of July, had 90-mile-an-hour winds. And then we had another hurricane that hit North Carolina. And then we've had Marco, which was Sunday, briefly intensified to a hurricane. And now we have Laura. So Laura's the third Gulf, hurricane just in the Gulf. We've had a total of 4 this season. And the National Hurricane Center and NOAA are looking at it to be a very busy season. In fact, they said extremely active. And weather people don't use big words and hyperbole a lot. And so they're thinking before the season's over, we could have 19 to 25 named storms and, how many hurricanes? A lot of hurricanes. I lost my notes. And, usually a normal season, we usually have 12 storms, 6 hurricanes, and 3 major hurricanes. So they're looking at it to be a lot busier. We've got a lot to go if that forecast is going to pan out.
Oh, that is unfortunately not great news here. We've got Tommy watching from the Florida Panhandle. You look to be all right now, Tommy, but keep watching that forecast. As Leigh said, it can change very quickly. And Leigh, let me ask you, we know landfall is expected Wednesday evening, so that's tomorrow night. Is there time right now, and I'll pull up this map again for those of you who might have missed it. Is there time right now for this hurricane, for Hurricane Laura, to drastically change paths to hit Southern Alabama and the Florida Panhandle?
I mean, it is 2020, so never say never, right?
Right.
But, the Hurricane Center, every year they get better and better with their track forecasts. And you'll look at that error cone, is that what you call it, the white outlined area there. And every year it shrinks. It gets a little smaller. So the average error decreases a little bit every year. Now, Laura's out in the middle of the Gulf. It's, more than 24 hours away from landfall. So yes, there could be changes. I wouldn't expect big shifts like as far east as Alabama. I think the forecast track has stayed fairly consistent, especially for the last 24 hours. So I would go with their forecast on that. I think it's pretty safe to assume that it's going to come in somewhere in that area. But never say never. Hurricanes are known to do crazy things, that we don't ever expect. So, but I think they have the forecast uncertainty, which they had a lot earlier with Laura as it crossed over Cuba. It crossed over Hispaniola before that. That added a lot of uncertainty to the track. But now that it's out in the Gulf and there's nothing really impeding it, I think they're going to, solidify that track a lot more, especially over the course of today.
So we see at the top of that shaded white area, that 7 a.m. Friday hit that looks to be it looks like to be in kind of the middle of Arkansas, kind of at the bottom tip of Tennessee.
Right.
Does that mean kind of in summary for Alabama, we're just going to have, it seems like a full week of rain, of storms, and no sunshine?
No, I don't think so. Although it is August and it's nice to have clouds in August to keep the temperatures down. But I think we'll have scattered storms through Alabama. I think the sun will peek out at times. You'll get to see it maybe occasionally. It's not going to be a continuous rain from now through the weekend. So, but it's very tropical out there right now, even where we are in central Alabama. So that tropical air makes it easier for rain showers to develop, and just, drench us in a matter of minutes. So just, that's probably what we're going to be expecting through the end of the week.
Well, Leigh, I so appreciate you coming here, breaking down this forecast. And I do have to ask you before we go, what is our next hurricane after Laura?
Well, the next name, we've had 13 named storms so far. So the next name on the list is the N storm. And this year it will be Nana. And I do believe you pronounce it like Nana. And we don't know, what shape or form Nana is going to take. I'm pretty sure there will be a Nana at some point. Some long-range forecasters that I follow are thinking maybe the first week of September we could start to see a little more activity after Laura is out of the way. So we could have Nana in September. We'll just have to wait and see. And, the list goes through W, and that's where they run out of names after W. And then, so we hope we don't make it to the end of the list, but it's a very real possibility this year, unfortunately.
Right. We don't want to make it to the end of the list. And honestly, I think we're all a little bit dreading that possible Hurricane Nana after Laura. So, Leigh, if Nana develops and starts looking like after Laura, it is going to be a major storm. We're going to have you back to explain Hurricane Nana and tell us where we need to hide from Nana.
She will come after you with the switch, so look out.
And she can always find you. Always find you. So, Leigh, thank you so much for coming and breaking this forecast down a little bit. And Leigh will keep this forecast updated. Again, it's at the top of your comment, and you can click that, get your latest forecast there on AL.com from Leigh. So, thanks again, Leigh. Thank all of you for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.